The rain had finally stopped, but the cold November wind cut through her thin jacket like a knife. Lily pulled the worn fabric tighter around her shoulders as she walked down Fifth Avenue, trying to look like she belonged there among the well-dressed shoppers and business people hurrying to their destinations. She didn't belong. Not anymore. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since she'd left the Henderson house, her fourth foster home in 2 years. 3 weeks of sleeping in bus stations, public libraries, and once in the back corner of a 24-hour laundromat. 3 weeks of skipping meals, rationing the $63 she'd saved from her birthday money, watching it slowly disappear on cheap sandwiches and bottles of water. Now she was down to $7 and change. Her stomach growled loudly, reminding her that the granola bar she'd eaten for breakfast was now just a distant memory. Lunch had been 3 crackers she'd found at the bottom of her backpack. Dinner was supposed to be, well, she hadn't figured that part out yet. Lily stopped in front of a restaurant window, drawn by the warm golden light spilling onto the sidewalk. Giuseppe's, the elegant sign read in cursive letters. Through the spotless glass, she could see couples laughing over wine, families sharing plates of pasta, waiters moving gracefully between tables with trays held high. The smell of garlic and fresh bread drifted out every time the door opened, making her mouth water. She knew she shouldn't be standing there. People like her didn't eat at places like this, but she couldn't make herself walk away. Not yet. That's when she saw it. In the corner of the dining room, positioned near a stone fireplace, sat the most beautiful piano she'd ever seen. A grand piano, black and gleaming under a small spotlight, its lid propped open like a wing. Currently, no one was playing it. It sat silent and waiting, almost calling to her. Lily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't touched a piano in 8 months. Not since before Gran died. Not since she'd entered the foster system and lost everything that mattered. Her grandmother's upright piano had been sold along with everything else in the small apartment they'd shared. The scholarship to the Youth Music Academy had slipped away when she'd missed too many classes, bouncing between foster homes across the city. But she still remembered. Her fingers still knew the keys. Even if they hadn't touched them in months, Gran's voice still echoed in her mind during quiet moments. "You have magic in those hands, sweetheart. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." An idea formed in Lily's mind. It was crazy, probably stupid. She'd most likely get laughed out of the place or worse. But desperation makes people brave, and she was very, very desperate. Before she could talk herself out of it, Lily pushed open the heavy wooden door. The warmth hit her first, then the smell of food so delicious it almost hurt. The restaurant was even more beautiful inside than it had looked through the window. White tablecloths, crystal glasses catching the candlelight, soft music playing from hidden speakers. Everyone looked so clean, so put together, so far removed from the world she'd been living in for the past 3 weeks. She became painfully aware of how she must look. Her jeans had a stain on the knee from when she'd tripped running for a bus. Her sneakers were held together with duct tape. Her brown hair, which she'd tried to smooth down in a gas station bathroom that morning, probably looked like a bird's nest. She could feel the eyes turning toward her, the subtle shift in the atmosphere as people noticed someone who clearly didn't belong. The hostess stand was directly ahead. A tall woman with perfectly styled black hair and a crisp white blouse stood behind it, reviewing a reservation book. She looked up as Lily approached, and her expression shifted from professional courtesy to barely concealed disgust in about 2 seconds. "Can I help you?" The woman's tone made it clear that helping Lily was the last thing she wanted to do. Lily's courage wavered. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. I was wondering about your piano." The hostess's eyebrows rose. "Our piano?" "Yes, ma'am. The one over there." Lily gestured toward the corner. "I noticed no one's playing it right now, and I thought, I wanted to ask." She took a deep breath and forced herself to say it. "May I play it? For dinner?" For a moment, the hostess just stared at her. Then she did something worse than yelling. She laughed. Not a small chuckle, but a loud, sharp laugh that made several nearby diners look over. "You want to play our piano for food?" The woman's voice carried across the restaurant, making no attempt at discretion. "Like some kind of street performer?" Lily felt her cheeks burning. "I'm a good player, I promise. I studied at—" "Antonio!" the hostess called out, cutting her off. "Antonio, you need to come here." A man in an expensive suit approached from the back of the restaurant. He had graying hair, a carefully trimmed beard, and the kind of presence that suggested he was used to being in charge. This had to be the manager or owner. "What's the problem, Francesca?" he asked, though his eyes were already sizing up Lily, taking in her appearance with obvious disapproval. "This girl wants to play the piano in exchange for a meal." Francesca said it like it was the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. Antonio looked at Lily more closely, his expression a mixture of pity and annoyance. She could see him taking in every detail. Her dirty shoes, her cheap jacket with the broken zipper, the backpack that held everything she owned in the world. "Young lady," he said, his voice not unkind but firm, "this is a 5-star establishment. Our guests expect a certain atmosphere, professional musicians. We can't just let anyone walk in off the street and—" "I am professional," Lily interrupted, then immediately regretted the outburst. "I mean, I was training to be. I had a scholarship to the Eastside Youth Conservatory. My teacher said I had real potential. I've been playing since I was 6. "That's very nice," Antonio said, clearly not believing her, "but I'm afraid it's not possible. Perhaps you could try the community center on Maple Street. I believe they serve dinner and sometimes have open mic nights." He was already turning away, ready to dismiss her. Francesca was smirking, enjoying the whole situation. Around them, Lily could feel the other diners watching, judging, probably relieved that the uncomfortable moment would soon be over, and this girl would be back on the street where she belonged. Something inside Lily broke. Maybe it was hunger. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was 3 weeks of sleeping rough and fighting to survive. Or maybe it was Gran's voice in her head, telling her to never give up on her gift. "Please." The word came out stronger than she expected. "Just give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. If you don't think I'm good enough after 5 minutes, I'll leave and never come back." "I promise," Antonio sighed, opening his mouth to refuse again, when a voice from across the restaurant stopped him cold. "Let the girl play, Antonio." Everyone turned to look at the elderly man sitting alone at a corner table near the fireplace. He had white hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the quiet authority of someone who was used to being listened to. And just like that, everything changed. The restaurant went quiet. All eyes shifted from Lily to the elderly man sitting by the fireplace. He looked to be in his 70s, dressed in a well-tailored navy sweater and slacks with the kind of comfortable elegance that came from years of good taste, rather than trying too hard. His table was set for one, a half-finished plate of risotto in front of him and a glass of red wine catching the candlelight. Antonio's whole demeanor changed. His stiff posture relaxed slightly, and when he spoke there was genuine respect in his voice. "Mr. Vincent, I don't think this is really—" "5 minutes, Antonio. That's all she's asking for." The old man's voice was gentle but carried weight. He wasn't making a suggestion. What harm could it possibly do? We might all be pleasantly surprised. Lily watched the silent exchange between the two men. Clearly this Mr. Vincent was someone important. A regular customer, maybe. Or someone with enough influence that Antonio couldn't simply ignore him. She held her breath, waiting. Antonio looked back at Lily, his jaw tight. She could see him calculating, weighing his options. Finally, he let out a long sigh. "Fine." The word came out clipped, reluctant. 5 minutes. Not a second more. And when this doesn't work out, you leave immediately and you don't come back. Are we clear? Lily nodded quickly, not trusting her voice. Relief and terror mixed together in her chest, making her heart pound so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. "This is ridiculous," Francesca muttered. But Antonio silenced her with a look. The walk to the piano felt like the longest journey of Lily's life. Every table she passed, she could feel eyes on her. Conversations had stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. The soft background music seemed louder in the sudden silence. She heard the whispers start as she moved through the dining room. "Is this some kind of charity thing?" A woman's voice drifted from a nearby table. "She looks homeless," someone else whispered, not quite quietly enough. "I don't understand why Antonio is allowing this," said a man in an expensive suit, speaking to his dinner companion. "We came here for a nice evening, not to watch some beggar make a fool of herself." The woman sitting across from him, dripping in pearls and designer clothes, wrinkled her nose. Honestly, the nerve of some people. Just walking in off the street expecting handouts. Lily's face burned hot with shame. Her hands trembled as she clutched the straps of her backpack. She wanted to turn around and run out the door. to disappear into the night and forget this whole thing had ever happened. But Gran's voice echoed in her mind again. Courage isn't about not being scared, sweetheart. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway. She reached the piano and carefully set her backpack down beside the bench. The instrument was even more beautiful up close. A Steinway grand, its black surface polished to a mirror shine. She could see her own reflection in it, distorted and small. Lily slid onto the bench, the leather smooth and cool beneath her. For a moment she just sat there, her hands hovering over the keys. 8 months. It had been 8 months since she'd played. What if she'd forgotten? What if her fingers didn't remember? What if she made Antonio right? Proved everyone correct in their assumptions about her? "Any time now," Francesca called from the hostess stand, her voice dripping with sarcasm. A few people chuckled. Lily's hands dropped to her lap. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the faces watching her, waiting for her to fail. The piano bench was too high. No, too low. She couldn't remember. Her mind was blank, completely empty of every piece she'd ever learned. Then from across the room she heard Mr. Vincent's voice, quiet but clear. "Take your time, child. The music will come when you're ready." Something about his kindness steadied her. She opened her eyes and looked down at the keys. 88 of them, black and white, familiar as an old friend. Her hands settled into position and muscle memory took over where conscious thought failed. She didn't choose what to play. Her fingers made the decision for her, finding the opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It had been Gran's favorite. The piece she'd played at her grandmother's funeral, the last time she'd touched a piano. The first notes rang out into the restaurant, clear and pure. Conversations didn't just pause. They stopped completely, cut off mid-word as if someone had pressed a mute button on the entire room. Lily barely noticed. She was somewhere else now. Somewhere beyond the restaurant, beyond the shame and hunger and fear. Her fingers moved across the keys with a grace that surprised even her. The melody unfolded, sad and sweet, each note perfect. She could feel the music flowing through her, from her heart through her arms and into her hands. This was what Gran had taught her. Not just to play the notes, but to feel them, to let the piano become an extension of her soul. The nocturne swelled and softened, painting pictures in sound. She played the way Gran had shown her, with emotion and precision, letting each phrase breathe and speak. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. This was who she was, who she'd always been, underneath the dirty clothes and empty stomach and lost dreams. As the nocturne drew to a close, Lily transitioned seamlessly into something different. A jazz standard, The Nearness of You, but arranged in her own way, playful and sophisticated at the same time. Her fingers danced across the keys, finding rhythms and harmonies that made the old song feel new. She'd forgotten about the 5-minute limit. Forgotten about Antonio's warning. Forgotten about everything except the music pouring out of her and the piano responding to her touch like they'd never been apart. From the corner of her eye, she could see Francesca standing frozen at her hostess stand, mouth slightly open. The smug expression had melted off her face, replaced by something that looked like shock. Antonio stood beside her, equally still, his earlier annoyance completely gone. The businessman who'd called her a beggar had set down his fork. He sat perfectly motionless, staring at her with wide eyes. The woman in pearls had stopped eating entirely, one hand pressed against her chest, her earlier disdain replaced by something that might have been wonder. All around the restaurant, the same transformation was happening. People who'd looked at her with disgust now watched with amazement. Whispers of mockery had turned to whispers of awe. Lily moved into her final piece, one of her own choosing this time. A modern composition by Ludovico Einaudi, flowing and emotional, building in intensity until it filled every corner of the restaurant. Her hands flew across the keys, confident now, powerful. This was her voice, her truth, the thing that made her who she was when everything else had been stripped away. The final notes hung in the air, fading slowly into silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The restaurant remained frozen, caught in the spell of what they'd just heard. Then someone started clapping. It was Mr. Vincent, standing at his table by the fireplace, applauding steadily. Within seconds, others joined in. The businessmen, the woman in pearls, a young couple by the window. Then everyone, the entire restaurant rising from their seats in a wave of sound. They were giving her a standing ovation. Lily sat at the piano, her hands still resting on the keys, completely overwhelmed. She looked around at all these people she'd been so afraid of, who judged her so harshly, now clapping and cheering for her. Someone shouted, "Bravo!" from the back of the room. She'd played for 15 minutes, maybe longer, way more than the 5 she'd promised, but nobody seemed to care about that anymore. Lily stood up from the piano bench on shaky legs, her whole body trembling. The applause seemed to come from everywhere at once, washing over her in waves. She didn't know what to do with her hands, where to look, how to process what was happening. A few minutes ago, these same people had looked at her like she was trash. Now they were on their feet, clapping for her. She caught Francesca's eye across the room. The hostess stood motionless, her hands at her sides, face pale. The smugness was completely gone, replaced by something that looked almost like embarrassment. Good, Lily thought, then immediately felt guilty for thinking it. Antonio walked toward her slowly, weaving between the tables. Lily's heart started racing again. She'd gone way over the 5 minutes. She'd broken her promise. He was probably coming to throw her out, applause or no applause. But when he reached her, his expression wasn't angry. He looked stunned, like someone had just told him the sky was actually green and he was trying to figure out if it might be true. "Young lady," he said, and his voice was completely different from before. Soft, respectful. "I owe you an apology." That was extraordinary. Lily opened her mouth, but no words came out. She just stared at him. Antonio cleared his throat, glancing around at his restaurant full of watching customers. "I was wrong to judge you. Very wrong. Please forgive my rudeness." He gestured toward an empty table near the window. "Would you allow us to serve you dinner? Anything you'd like from the menu. On the house, of course." The room was still quiet except for a few scattered whispers. Everyone was watching this exchange, waiting to see what would happen next. Lily's voice cracked. "Really?" "Really," Antonio said, and he actually smiled. "Please, I insist." He led her to the table himself, pulling out the chair like she was royalty or something. Lily sat down carefully, half expecting this to be some kind of dream she'd wake up from. The white tablecloth felt crisp under her fingers. A waiter appeared almost immediately, setting down a glass of ice water and a basket of warm bread. The bread. God, the smell of it alone almost made her cry. She grabbed a piece, not caring how desperate it looked, and took a bite. It was still warm, soft inside with a perfect crust, and it tasted like heaven. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until that moment. "Take your time," Antonio said gently. "Our chef will prepare whatever you'd like." Before Lily could respond, a shadow fell across the table. She looked up to find Mr. Vincent standing there, leaning slightly on a wooden cane she hadn't noticed before. Up close, she could see the deep lines around his eyes, the age spots on his hands, but also the sharpness in his gaze, the intelligence there. "May I join you?" he asked. Lily nodded, still chewing her bread, suddenly aware that she probably had crumbs on her face. Mr. Vincent settled into the chair across from her with a small grunt, setting his cane against the table. "That was remarkable playing," he said. "Truly remarkable. You have a gift," Lily swallowed. "Thank you. And thank you for, speaking up for me. I don't think Mr. Antonio would have let me play if you hadn't said something." Mr. Vincent waved his hand dismissively. "Antonio's a good man. He just needed a reminder to look past appearances." He leaned forward slightly, studying her face. "You said you studied at Eastside Youth Conservatory?" "Yes, sir. For almost 3 years. I had a full scholarship." "Had?" The word hung in the air between them. Lily looked down at her plate, at the bread she was shredding into small pieces without realizing it. She didn't want to talk about this. Didn't want to explain her whole sad story to this stranger, no matter how kind he seemed. But something about his eyes made her feel safe. Like maybe he'd actually understand. "My grandmother died last February," she said quietly. "She raised me. It was just the 2 of us my whole life. After she passed, I went into foster care. I got bounced around to different homes, different neighborhoods. Missed too many classes at the conservatory. They gave my scholarship to someone else." Mr. Vincent listened without interrupting, his expression grave. "The last house I was in." Lily stopped, the memories rushing back. The yelling. The locked refrigerator. the way her foster father looked at her that made her skin crawl. It wasn't good, so I left. 3 weeks ago. You've been on the streets for 3 weeks? Mr. Vincent's voice was gentle, but Lily could hear the concern underneath. A child your age? I'm 15, almost 16. As if that made it better. As if being almost 16 meant she was old enough to handle living in bus stations and eating granola bars for dinner. Does anyone know where you are? Social services? The police? Lily shook her head. I can't go back. They'll just put me in another home and it'll be the same thing all over again or worse. At least out here I'm free. I can take care of myself. Even as she said it, she knew how ridiculous it sounded. She'd been taking care of herself so well that she'd resorted to begging for food in a fancy restaurant. Mr. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tapping thoughtfully on the table. Your grandmother taught you to play? Yeah, she was a piano teacher. Not famous or anything, just regular students in our neighborhood. But she was amazing. She could play anything. Lily smiled at the memory. She used to say that music was the language of the soul, that when words failed, the piano could say what we couldn't. A wise woman. Mr. Vincent pulled out his phone, an old model that he handled carefully, like he wasn't quite comfortable with technology. May I ask you something, Lily? Would you be interested in continuing your education? In music, I mean. Lily's throat tightened. I can't afford it. The conservatory costs thousands of dollars without the scholarship, and I don't have. What if cost wasn't an issue? She looked up at him, confused. I don't understand. I taught piano at the Riverside Music Academy for 40 years, Mr. Vincent explained. I retired 5 years ago, but I still have connections there. Good connections. They have a program for talented students in difficult circumstances. Full scholarships plus housing assistance. Lily's heart started beating faster. Housing assistance? They work with a wonderful organization that provides dormitory-style living for young musicians who need it. Safe, supervised with house parents and everything. Students can focus on their training without worrying about where they'll sleep or where their next meal is coming from. It sounded too good to be true. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. There had to be a catch. Why would you do this for me? Lily asked. You don't even know me. Mr. Vincent smiled, and for the first time she saw sadness in his eyes. I had a granddaughter once. She loved music just like you. Played the violin. She had that same gift, that same fire. His voice caught slightly. We lost her when she was 17. Car accident. I'm so sorry, Lily whispered. It was a long time ago, but when I see talent like yours, especially in someone who's struggling the way you are, I think of her. I think about what she would have become if she'd had the chance. He reached across the table and patted her hand. Let me make a phone call. Just one call, if you're interested. The waiter appeared then with a steaming plate of fettuccine Alfredo, garlic bread on the side, and a small Caesar salad. The smell made Lily's stomach growl loudly enough that both she and Mr. Vincent heard it. He chuckled. Eat first, he said, standing up with the help of his cane. We can talk more after. Take your time. Enjoy every bite. You've earned it. As he walked back to his own table, Lily looked down at the food in front of her. Real food. More food than she'd seen in weeks. Her hands shook as she picked up her fork. Around the restaurant, life was slowly returning to normal. Conversations resumed. Other diners went back to their meals. But she could still feel people glancing at her. Their expressions changed. No longer disgust or pity, but something else. Curiosity, maybe. Respect. She took a bite of the pasta and closed her eyes. It was perfect. Rich and creamy, with just the right amount of garlic. She'd forgotten food could taste like this. As she ate, her mind raced. A scholarship, housing, a real chance to study music again the way she had with Gran. Could it really be possible? Or was this just another dream that would disappear in the morning? Lily glanced over at Mr. Vincent, who was back at his table, his phone pressed to his ear. He caught her eye and winked. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. Lily was halfway through her pasta when Mr. Vincent returned to her table. He moved slowly, his cane tapping against the floor with each step. But there was energy in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He sat down across from her with a satisfied smile. Well, he said, I just got off the phone with an old colleague of mine, Dr. Patricia Chen. She's the director of admissions at Riverside Academy now. Lily set down her fork, her appetite suddenly forgotten. Her mouth went dry. And? She remembers you, actually. Said you auditioned 3 years ago for their summer intensive program, but couldn't attend because of the cost. Mr. Vincent leaned back in his chair. She's very interested in hearing you play. There's an opening for an audition Monday morning at 10. Would that work for you? Monday. That was 3 days away. Lily's mind spun. Yes, but I don't have anything to wear. I don't have sheet music. I haven't practiced in months and… One thing at a time, Mr. Vincent interrupted gently. First, let me ask you something important. Do you want this? Really want it? Because this isn't going to be easy. Riverside is one of the best music academies in the state. The program is intense, 6 hours of practice minimum every day. Theory classes, performance requirements, competitions. It's not for students who just like music. It's for students who can't imagine doing anything else. Lily thought about the past 8 months, the emptiness she'd felt every day without music in her life, the way her fingers ached to touch piano keys, how she'd sometimes hear melodies in her head and have nowhere to put them, no way to let them out. Music wasn't something she liked. It was part of her, like breathing. I want it, she said, and her voice didn't shake. More than anything, Mr. Vincent nodded like that was the answer he'd expected. Good. Then here's what we're going to do. Dr. Chen has agreed to an emergency audition. If you pass, and I believe you will, they can fast-track your application for the scholarship program. The spring semester starts in January, but they have a few spots in their winter intensive that begins next week. Next week. Lily's head was spinning. Everything was happening so fast. As for the immediate concerns, Mr. Vincent continued, pulling a small notepad from his pocket and writing something down. You'll need a place to stay until the audition. I know a woman who runs a boarding house not far from here. Good, safe place. She has a room available and owes me a favor. You can stay there for the weekend. He tore off the paper and slid it across the table. An address was written in neat, careful handwriting. But I can't pay for… Consider it an investment in your future, Mr. Vincent said firmly. When you're a famous concert pianist someday, you can pay it forward to another young person who needs help. Deal? Lily's eyes burned with tears she was trying hard not to let fall. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. Save your thanks for after the audition. He pulled out his wallet and placed several bills on the table. This should cover some basics. Clean clothes for the audition, some toiletries, food for the weekend. Nothing fancy, just what you need. Lily stared at the money. $200. She hadn't seen that much cash in one place since Gran died. This is too much, I can't… You can and you will. Mr. Vincent's tone left no room for argument. Listen to me, Lily, I'm an old man. I have more money than I need and no one left to spend it on. Letting me help you isn't charity. It's giving me purpose. Let me have that, okay? A tear escaped down Lily's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, nodding because she didn't trust her voice. Antonio appeared at their table, clearly having been watching from a distance. Excuse me, he said, looking a bit uncomfortable. I couldn't help but overhear some of your conversation. If I may, he glanced at Lily. I'd like to offer you a job. Lily blinked. A job? Playing piano here. Friday and Saturday evenings, 6 to 9. We've been looking for the right musician for months. Most of them are technically skilled but have no soul. You have both. He named an hourly rate that made Lily's jaw drop. It's not much, but it would give you some income. Help you save for the future. Lily looked between Antonio and Mr. Vincent, overwhelmed. Are you serious? Completely. You'd start next Friday, assuming all goes well with your audition and living situation. Antonio smiled, a real smile this time. What do you say? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. As Antonio walked away, Lily turned back to Mr. Vincent. I don't understand why this is happening. This morning I was sleeping on a bench in the park. Tonight I have a job and a chance at a scholarship. It doesn't feel real. It's real, Mr. Vincent assured her. But Lily, I need you to understand something. This opportunity, it's a door opening, but you're the one who has to walk through it. You're the one who has to do the work, the practicing, the studying, the performing. I can point you in the right direction, but the journey is yours. I know. I won't let you down. Don't worry about letting me down. Just don't let yourself down. He stood up, reaching for his cane. Finish your dinner. Then I want you to go to that address tonight. Mrs. Kowalski is expecting you. She'll have a warm bed and a hot shower waiting, a hot shower. Lily hadn't had one of those in 3 weeks. The idea of it, of clean clothes and a real bed, seemed almost too luxurious to imagine. Tomorrow, Mr. Vincent continued, take some of that money and get what you need. Sunday, rest, eat well, sleep. Monday morning, I'll pick you up at 9:30 and drive you to the academy myself. Sound like a plan? Lily nodded, not trusting herself to speak without crying. Mr. Vincent started to leave, then paused. Oh, and Lily, your grandmother was right. Music is the language of the soul. You spoke that language beautifully tonight. She would be very proud of you, that did it. The tears came freely now, streaming down Lily's face. But they weren't sad tears. They were something else entirely. Relief, maybe, or hope, or just the release of 3 weeks of fear and loneliness and desperation finally breaking free. Mr. Vincent patted her shoulder once, gently, then made his way toward the exit. Several diners stopped him on his way out, and Lily could see them talking, glancing in her direction. One woman, the same one who'd been wearing pearls earlier and had wrinkled her nose at Lily, approached the table. "Excuse me, dear," she said, and her voice was kind now, apologetic. "I just wanted to say, your playing was beautiful. Truly moving." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card and a $50 bill. "My daughter teaches at a music supply store downtown. This card will get you a discount on any sheet music you might need. And this," she placed the bill on the table, "is just a little something to help. I'm sorry for how I reacted earlier. I was wrong." Before Lily could respond, the woman hurried away as if embarrassed by her own kindness. More people approached after that. A young couple left $20. An elderly man told her his wife had been a pianist and would have loved hearing her play. A family with 2 kids asked if she'd be playing again next week. Each person who came by looked different from how they had before. Softer, more human. By the time Lily finished her meal, there was a small pile of cash on the table. She counted it carefully. $340, not including what Mr. Vincent had given her. In one evening, she'd made more money than she'd had in the past month. She gathered the bills carefully, folding them and tucking them deep into her jacket pocket. Then she packed up her backpack, making sure she had the address Mr. Vincent had written down. As she stood to leave, Antonio appeared one more time. "Before you go," he said, "I want you to have this." He handed her a business card with the restaurant's information. "My personal cell number is on the back. If you need anything before Friday, you call me." "Understood?" Lily looked at the card, then at Antonio, then around the restaurant at all these people who'd gone from strangers to something like allies in the span of an hour. She thought about how close she'd come to not walking through that door, how she'd almost talked herself out of asking to play. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "All of you. Thank you so much." She walked out of Giuseppe's into the cold November night, but somehow it didn't feel as cold anymore. The wind still blew, but she had money in her pocket, an address in her hand, and for the first time in a very long time, something that felt dangerously close to hope blooming in her chest. 3 days until her audition. 3 days to prepare for a chance at a real future. She could do this. She would do this for Gran, for herself, for the music that had never stopped living inside her, even when everything else had fallen apart. Monday morning arrived faster than Lily expected. She stood in front of the mirror in Mrs. Kowalski's boarding house, barely recognizing herself. The past 3 days felt like a dream she was afraid to wake up from. Mrs. Kowalski had turned out to be exactly what Mr. Vincent promised. A round, cheerful Polish woman in her 60s, who asked no questions and offered nothing but kindness. She'd shown Lily to a small clean room with a real bed, soft blankets, and curtains that actually matched. That first night, Lily had taken the longest shower of her life, watching 3 weeks of street grime wash down the drain until the water finally ran clear. Saturday, she'd gone shopping with the money from the restaurant. Nothing fancy, just a simple black dress appropriate for an audition, a pair of shoes that didn't have duct tape on them, and some basic necessities. She'd spent Sunday practicing on Mrs. Kowalski's old upright piano in the living room, her fingers slowly remembering what they'd once known so well. Now looking at her reflection, she saw someone different from the desperate girl who'd walked into Giuseppe's on Thursday night. Her hair was clean and brushed. Her face was washed. The dark circles under her eyes had faded slightly. She looked like a music student. She looked like someone with a future. A car horn honked outside. Mr. Vincent, right on time. Lily grabbed her bag and hurried downstairs. Mrs. Kowalski was waiting at the bottom, holding a paper bag. Breakfast, the older woman said, pressing it into Lily's hands. Homemade blueberry muffins. Can't audition on an empty stomach. Thank you, Mrs. K, for everything. You just go show them what you can do, sweetheart. Make us proud. The drive to Riverside Academy took 20 minutes. Mr. Vincent's car was an old Buick that smelled like leather and peppermint, and he drove carefully, never going over the speed limit. He didn't talk much, seeming to sense that Lily needed the quiet to prepare herself mentally. The academy was housed in a beautiful old building that had once been a mansion. Tall windows, stone columns, and perfectly manicured gardens even in late November. Through the windows, Lily could see students walking the halls with instrument cases, their faces focused and serious. This was a different world, a world she'd been part of once and lost, a world she was trying desperately to get back to. Nervous, Mr. Vincent asked as he pulled into the parking lot. Terrified, Lily admitted. Good. That means you care. He turned off the engine and looked at her. Remember what I told you. They're not just evaluating your technical skill. They want to see your passion, your heart. Play the way you did Thursday night. Play like it's the only thing that matters. Inside, the academy was even more impressive. High ceilings with crystal chandeliers, polished wood floors, and the distant sound of someone practicing scales on a violin. A young woman at the front desk directed them to the third floor, where the audition rooms were located. Dr. Chen was waiting outside one of the practice rooms. She was a small Asian woman with gray-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, wearing a burgundy blazer and an expression that gave nothing away. Professional, serious, maybe a little intimidating. Lily, she said, shaking her hand firmly. I remember you from 3 years ago. You played Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata, first movement. Lily was shocked she remembered. Yes, ma'am. You were good then. Let's see if you're better now. Dr. Chen gestured to the door. There's a Steinway inside. Take a few minutes to warm up if you need to. When you're ready, play whatever you'd like. I'll be evaluating technique, musicality, and artistic interpretation. Any questions? About 1 million, Lily thought. But she shook her head. Mr. Vincent, Dr. Chen said, you're welcome to wait in the observation room next door. There's a window. Mr. Vincent squeezed Lily's shoulder once, then followed Dr. Chen down the hall. Lily stood alone outside the practice room, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. This was it. Everything came down to the next 30 minutes. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was smaller than she'd expected, but beautiful. Hardwood floors, excellent acoustics, and in the center a gleaming Steinway grand piano that made the one at Giuseppe's look ordinary. Natural light streamed through a large window overlooking the gardens. Lily sat at the bench and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking. She placed them on the keys, feeling their familiar smooth surface beneath her fingers. She played a few scales to warm up, then some arpeggios, listening to how the piano responded. It was perfectly tuned, the tone rich and clear. A knock on the door. Dr. Chen entered with a clipboard and a man Lily didn't recognize. He was younger, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a professor's tweed jacket. This is Mr. Ashford, our head piano instructor, Dr. Chen said. He'll be observing as well. Whenever you're ready. They sat in chairs against the wall, their faces neutral, waiting. Lily turned back to the piano. For a moment, her mind went completely blank. She couldn't remember a single piece she'd planned to play. Panic rose in her chest. Then she heard Gran's voice, as clear as if the old woman was sitting right beside her. Close your eyes, sweetheart. Feel the music first, then let it flow. Lily closed her eyes. She thought about the past 3 weeks. The fear, the hunger, the loneliness, but also the kindness of strangers. Mr. Vincent's gentle encouragement. Antonio's second chance. The way music had saved her when she had nothing else left. Her fingers found the opening notes of Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor. It was ambitious, one of the most difficult pieces in the classical repertoire, but it felt right. The piece told a story, just like her life was a story, full of darkness and light, struggle and hope. She played with everything she had. Every emotion from the past 3 weeks poured into the music. The fear became minor chords. The hope became soaring melodies. Her fingers flew across the keys, executing the technically demanding passages with precision, while never losing sight of the emotion underneath. The piece built and built, the tempo increasing, the dynamic swelling until the room seemed to vibrate with sound. Then suddenly it crashed into the final dramatic chords. Silence. Lily sat perfectly still, her hands resting on the keys, afraid to look up, afraid to see disappointment on their faces. "That was remarkable," Mr. Ashford said quietly. "Truly remarkable. How long did you say you've been without regular practice?" 8 months, sir." "Impossible," he said, but he was smiling. "That level of technique doesn't survive 8 months without practice. Unless—" He looked at Dr. Chen. "Unless the talent is extraordinary to begin with." Dr. Chen was writing something on her clipboard. "Play something else. Something you love. Not to prove anything, just for yourself." Lily didn't hesitate this time. She played the jazz piece from Thursday night, the one that had made her feel free. She added improvisation, letting her creativity loose, playing with the rhythm and harmony. It was playful and joyful, and for those few minutes she forgot she was in an audition. She just played because it felt good. When she finished, she finally looked up at them. Dr. Chen and Mr. Ashford were both smiling. "I think we've seen enough," Dr. Chen said. She stood up and walked over to the piano, extending her hand. "Welcome to Riverside Academy, Lily. Full scholarship starting with our winter intensive next Monday." Lily's vision blurred with tears. "Really? Are you serious?" "Completely serious. You have raw talent that we rarely see. With proper training and dedication, you could go very far." Dr. Chen's professional mask cracked slightly, showing warmth underneath. "We'll get you set up with housing through our student assistance program. You'll have your own room in the dormitory, meals provided, and access to practice rooms 24/7. Mr. Ashford stood as well. "I'd like to be your primary instructor if that's acceptable to you." "I think we could do great work together." Lily couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. There was a knock on the window. Mr. Vincent stood on the other side, giving her a thumbs up, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Everything changed in that moment. Not just her circumstances, but something deeper. For 3 weeks, Lily had felt invisible, worthless, like someone the world had forgotten. Now, standing in this practice room with 2 accomplished musicians telling her she had a future, she finally understood something Gran had tried to teach her years ago. Your worth isn't determined by your circumstances. It's determined by who you are when everything else is stripped away. That night, Lily played at Giuseppe's for the first time as an official employee. The restaurant was packed, and Antonio introduced her to the crowd as their new pianist and a scholarship student at Riverside Academy. The applause was thunderous. She played for 2 hours straight, pouring her gratitude into every note. Mr. Vincent sat at his usual table, listening with his eyes closed. Mrs. Kowalski had come to see her, beaming with pride. Even Francesca, the hostess who'd laughed at her just days before, stopped to listen, something like respect in her eyes. During her break, a little girl approached, maybe 8 years old, clutching her mother's hand. "Excuse me," the girl said shyly. "You play really pretty. I'm learning piano too, but I'm not very good yet." Lily knelt down to the girl's level. "Keep practicing. Every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Promise me?" The little girl nodded solemnly. As Lily watched her walk away, she thought about the chain of kindness that had led her here. Mr. Vincent helping her, Antonio giving her a chance, Dr. Chen seeing her potential, and now maybe someday she'd be the one helping someone else, paying forward the grace she'd been given. She returned to the piano and began playing again. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because music was who she was, and for the first time in a long time, she had a place where that was enough. The restaurant filled with sound, and Lily filled with hope, and somewhere she liked to think Gran was smiling.